Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to explore those complex stories simmering beneath the surface.
Helping you understand the currents that shape our world.
Today, we're stepping right into a classroom. Imagine one in Mumbai. You've got these bright-eyed first graders, right? Pencils ready, big dreams.
Yeah, picture it. They're already learning their own beautiful Marathi, and they're getting started with English, which, is seen as this global key.
Exactly. And then suddenly, bam, a third language gets thrown into the mix. And let me tell you, it sparked a debate across Maharashtra that's, well, hotter than a Mumbai summer.
It really has. It's more than just a simple disagreement. It's become this really intense cultural and political controversy, a real flashpoint.
So that's our mission today. We're going to unpack this whole thing, this linguistic tug-of-war in the classroom.
We'll look at the twists, the turns, and interestingly, some surprising links to history. It really gets to the heart of education, identity, and how a state like Maharashtra sees itself.
Okay, so let's dive in. Where did this specific controversy kick off?
It really ignited around June 17th, 2025. That's when the Maharashtra government put out this official document, a government resolution, or GR.
Right, the GR. And what did it say?
It declared that Hindi would, and they use the word generally, be the third language option for students in Marathi and English medium schools.
And this was for the little ones, starting right from class 1.
Yeah, starting with classes 1 to 5, beginning in the 2025-26 school year. Now, the government framed this as, just getting in line with the national education policy.
The NEP 2020, right, which talks about a 3-language formula.
Exactly. So on paper, it sounds pretty logical, follow the national policy, but as we quickly saw, it was anything but simple.
Okay, so let's break down that 3-language formula itself, the NEP vision. What's the core idea there?
Well, the core idea is actually quite, you could say, noble. It aims for multilingualism, national unity. The plan is learn your mother tongue or regional language.
Which would be Marathi for most in Maharashtra.
Correct. Then English for obvious reasons, global communication opportunities, and then a third language, another Indian language.
To sort of build bridges across the country.
Precisely. Foster understanding, national cohesion. So in Maharashtra, that formula naturally looks like Marathi, English, and, well, for most schools, the assumed third would be Hindi.
Okay, but you said it wasn't simple. What's the catch?
Ah, yes, the catch. And this is really where the controversy flares up. The resolution wasn't just saying, hey, schools, offer a third language. It put a very specific condition on which third language.
Which was?
For a school to offer an alternative Indian language, let's say, Kannada or Tamil or Bengali, they need to have at least 20 students per grade who specifically opt for it.
20 students per grade. That sounds like quite a high bar, especially for primary school.
It is. And if a school doesn't meet that 20-student minimum for an alternative language, well, then it defaults to Hindi.
So Hindi becomes the default option unless there's significant demand for something else.
Essentially, yes. And any other languages, the ones that don't meet the quota, they're pushed into online-only teaching.
Online teaching for first graders learning a new language? Wow, okay. I can see why critics jumped on that.
Oh, immediately. They called it a rigged game. Like one of those choose-your-own-adventure books where all the paths secretly lead to the same ending anyway.
So the choice isn't really a free choice in practice.
That's the argument. And that 20-student rule became a major sticking point. The Akhil Bharatiya Marathi Sahitya Mahamandal, that's a very influential Marathi literary organization, they cried foul almost instantly.
What were their main objections?
Well, first, they pointed straight at the NEP document itself. They argued quite strongly that the NEP actually suggests introducing a third language from class 6 onwards, not class 1.
Ah, so starting later when kids are a bit older.
Exactly. And that's not just about timing, it's about pedagogy, about child development. They argued that asking a 6-year-old who's just getting grips with maybe 2 languages and 2 scripts.
Marathi's Devanagari, English is Roman.
Right. Asking them to suddenly add a third language, Hindi, which also uses Devanagari, but, with its own nuances. It's a huge cognitive load.
Yeah, I can imagine. It sounds potentially confusing. They compared it to asking a toddler to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded.
That was the analogy used, yes. It paints a vivid picture of the perceived challenge. So it's a clash between educational principles and this policy mandate.
Were there other practical concerns they raised? beyond the age issue?
Oh, definitely. A very big one was resources, specifically teachers. The Mandel asked, how can we realistically add a third language when so many schools are already struggling to find enough qualified teachers for just Marathi and English?
That's a fair point. You can't just mandate something without the infrastructure to support it.
Precisely. They even mentioned that some older students still have trouble with basic Marathi reading, so the idea of adding another language seemed to them like putting the cart miles before the horse.
Like asking a chef to whip up a gourmet meal with an empty pantry, as the outline put it.
Exactly that. It highlights the gap between policy ambition and practical reality.
So these academic and practical points quickly morphed into something bigger, didn't they? More cultural.
Absolutely. The Mahamandal didn't pull any punches. They warned about what they termed a Hindi invasion into Marathi's space.
Invasion. That's strong.
Very strong. They questioned why Maharashtra was doing this when even neighboring Gujarat, which you might think is more Hindi-aligned, doesn't mandate Hindi for primary kids like this.
And this ties back into history, you mentioned.
Deeply. It taps right into the identity politics forged during the Samyukta Maharashtra movement in the 1950s. That was a huge struggle to create a state specifically for Marathi speakers.
With Mumbai as its capital, secured in 1960.
Yes, Mumbai became the symbolic heart, the crown jewel of Marathi identity. So any policy that's perceived, rightly or wrongly, as potentially weakening Marathi's position or, imposing Hindi, it touches a very raw nerve.
It's not just about language learning. It's about heritage, about a hard-won identity.
That's the core of it. And this sensitivity quickly fueled a political firestorm.
Right. Let's talk about the political reaction.
They were swift and sharp. From the opposition, a Congress leader, Harshvardhan Sapkal, went so far as to call the resolution a planned plot to impose Hindi.
A plot?
Yes. And he accused the state leadership, the chief minister, the deputy CMs, of essentially betraying Marathi pride to follow a Delhi agenda. That phrase, Delhi agenda, is very loaded politically.
Suggesting federal overreach or pressure from the central government.
Exactly. It implies a conspiracy almost to sideline Marathi.
And it wasn't just the Congress, right? Raj Thackeray also weighed in.
He did. Raj Thackeray, known for his sometimes fiery pro-Marathi stance, suggested there was a lobby of northern Indian IAS officers pushing Hindi.
An administrative angle.
Yes, and he urged schools to resist what he called this hidden agenda. He came out with a very punchy line, too. We're Hindus, but not Hindi.
That's memorable. Did his party take action?
They did. The MNS, his party, organized protests. They actually burned copies of the government resolution in Mumbai, Pune, Navi Mumbai, turning it into quite a public spectacle.
Real street theater, as it were.
You could say that. And alongside the politicians, Marathi language advocacy groups, like the Marathi Bhasha Abhyas Kendra, led by Deepak Pawar, echoed these concerns, warning about a backdoor imposition of Hindi.
So a lot of heat directed at the government. How did they respond?
Well, the chief minister, Devendra Fadnavis, stepped in pretty quickly on June 18th, trying to calm things down.
What was his message?
He tried to clarify things. He stated explicitly that Hindi is not compulsory. He emphasized that students can choose any Indian language as their third language.
But what about the 20-student rule? Did he address that?
He defended the overall three-language formula as a national policy, pointing out that it applies across the country. He even mentioned that Tamil Nadu had challenged it in court and lost.
So his argument was basically, this is the national rule. We have to follow it. We can't just be an outlier with only two languages.
That was the essence of it. He also tried to frame it in terms of national unity, asking, why oppose Hindi, an Indian language, when people readily accept English, a foreign one?
A strategic move, trying to shift the focus. What about others in the government?
Deputy Chief Minister Ajit Pawar also spoke. He took a slightly different tack, dismissing the whole controversy as unnecessary disputes created by people with maybe too much free time.
That sounds a bit dismissive of the concerns raised.
It was interpreted that way by some. He did try to offer reassurance, saying Marathi is their mother tongue. It will always have first preference. But, given the political dynamics within the ruling coalition itself.
Which includes the Shiv Sena holding the education portfolio.
Right. Critics weren't entirely convinced. There were even accusations flying around that maybe parts of the government were, quote, stabbing Marathi in the back.
Okay, so the political back and forth continued. But let's shift back to the practical side. What are the real-world challenges of actually doing this?
Huge challenges. We heard from Vasant Kalpande, a former chairman of the Maharashtra State Board. He was blunt. He called that 20-student rule a sham.
Why a sham?
He predicted that, realistically, most schools just won't find 20 kids per grade wanting to learn, say, Bengali or Telugu. So parents, looking at perceived utility, job prospects, national reach, they'll likely just default to Hindi.
Making Hindi the de facto mandatory third language, even if not officially compulsory?
That's the fear. And the idea of teaching other languages online, Kalpande and others saw that as impractical, almost a cop-out. Imagine trying to teach foundational language skills to a 6-year-old over a patchy internet connection.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly difficult. And we already touched on the teacher shortage.
Absolutely critical. Many schools are already stretched thin, mandating a third language when they're struggling with two. It just seems unsustainable. It risks overburdening teachers and potentially diluting the quality of education across the board.
And potentially confusing the kids too, especially with the similar scripts.
That's a real concern. For young minds, distinguishing nuances between Marathi and Hindi, both using Devanagari while also learning Roman script for English, it could lead to more confusion than fluency.
So it seems like a policy facing significant practical hurdles. And you mentioned earlier, this isn't entirely new territory for Maharashtra.
Not at all. There's a definite sense of déjà vu. Just back in April 2025, there was a similar uproar over a government circular that seemed to make Hindi announcements mandatory in some contexts.
And the government backtracked on that one?
They did, after the backlash. So when this new resolution came out in June, just a couple of months later, focused on schools, many people immediately saw it as the same agenda, just repackaged. Hence the cries of backdoor imposition.
Like they tried the front door, it didn't work, so now they're trying the back.
That's the perception among critics. It feels like a U-turn on a U-turn for them.
Okay, let's zoom out slightly. How does this Maharashtra situation fit into the bigger picture of language debates across India?
It's very much part of a larger, long-running national narrative. Language politics in India are as old as the Republic itself. You mentioned Tamil Nadu earlier.
Right, their fierce resistance to Hindi imposition.
Fierce is the word. Going back decades, to the 1930s even, there were massive protests, sadly even self-immolations in the 1960s, which led to Prime Minister Nehru's assurance that English would continue alongside Hindi as an official language indefinitely.
So deep historical roots of resistance in the South.
Definitely. And it's not just Tamil Nadu. Karnataka has also voiced significant reservations about the three-language formula. There's data suggesting many students there struggle with Hindi. Remember the SSLC exam results in 2024, where a large number failed Hindi.
It shows the challenges aren't unique to Maharashtra.
Not at all. In a nation with, 22 official languages listed in the Constitution and literally thousands of dialects spoken, trying to implement a uniform language policy is incredibly complex.
It really does feel like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole sometimes. Or, as one source put it, trying to fit a dosa into a roti mold.
A very apt analogy. It gets to the heart of this fundamental tension in India.
Yeah.
How do you foster national unity without erasing or diminishing the incredible linguistic diversity that defines the country?
Is the three-language formula weaving a tapestry, or is it imposing a uniform blanket?
That is the question. Hindi is spoken by a large percentage, around 46%, and it undoubtedly serves as a link language across many regions. Nobody disputes its importance. But the debate is whether mandating it, even implicitly through rules like the 20-student minimum, ends up alienating states where other languages have deep historical and cultural significance.
Like Marathi, which you said is recognized as a classical language.
Exactly. Marathi has its own rich literary history, its own cultural weight. It deserves its space, its prominence. Finding that balance between promoting Hindi as a link language and protecting, nurturing languages like Marathi, it's a constant tightrope walk.
So where do things stand right now, as of June 19th? Has the storm passed?
Not really. The controversy is still very much active. Protests are ongoing, maybe simmering rather than boiling, but still present. Literary figures continue to speak out. Political parties are treading carefully, very wary of that anti-Marathi label.
It sounds like the issue is far from resolved.
Far from it. And the stakes are really high. For parents and kids, it's about practicalities, teacher availability, the quality of education, whether children will cope or struggle.
And for Maharashtra as a whole.
It's a fundamental question about its identity. Can the state integrate Hindi more widely into its education system without compromising the status and vitality of Marathi? Or could this policy actually trigger a backlash, maybe even a new wave of Marathi identity politics?
It really brings home how language isn't just communication. It's tied up with emotion, history, identity, a sense of belonging.
Absolutely. And the children caught in the middle of this deserve an education system that respects their roots, their mother tongue, while also giving them the skills they need for the future for a connected world.
It leaves us with a really profound question, doesn't it? For a country as diverse as India, how do you strike that delicate balance between fostering national unity and celebrating, protecting that incredible regional and linguistic diversity?
That's the million rupee question, really. It's something policymakers, educators, and frankly, all citizens need to grapple with. There are no easy answers.